After this weekend of college football games are complete, most teams, including your Iowa Hawkeyes, will have completed a quarter of the 2023 college football regular season. That's incredible when you think about it, how fast this sports season flies by each and every year. Enjoy it while it's here. In the meantime, let's take a look at my picks, and I'll give you my score prediction for Iowa and Western Michigan. We start off, though, with another Big Ten contest. The Illini of Illinois playing host to Penn State. Illinois did not look good last week at Kansas, could not stop the run. I think they bounced back this week against a Penn State team that has not yet really been tested. I think Penn State wins. I think Illinois covers. I think Penn State wins by like 10 in Champaign. If I'm Illinois, I'm keeping that game, trying to keep that game within a one-score deficit heading into the fourth quarter. Give yourself a fighting chance. That team needs some belief after not really having much go right last Friday night against the Jayhawks. Kansas State taking on Missouri, that game in Columbia. And Keegan Johnson, former Iowa wide receiver Keegan Johnson, it sounds like he's finally 100% healthy. Caught a few balls last week. It sounds like he's going to be more involved this week. I'll be anxious to see how he performs on the road. I like Kansas State to win this game, and I like them to cover the number. They are 4.5-point favorites. LSU taking on Mississippi State. I think too much offense here from LSU. They were obviously tested against Florida State. Didn't really pass that test defensively, but scored points. I think they go on the road, win big. They cover the 9.5. They take care of business. North Carolina playing host to the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Minnesota a little bit up and down last week against Eastern Michigan. They were impressive against Nebraska defensively, have not shown the ability to score a lot of points yet. Iowa fans should be able to relate to that. I think their defense keeps them in this game, but it's not enough to win on the road against the top 25 North Carolina Tar Heels squad. I think North Carolina wins. I think Minnesota covers the number. They're 7.5-point underdogs. South Carolina taking on Georgia. Georgia, the big home favorite, 27.5-point favorites. Usually when I count out a powerhouse like Georgia covering a big number, they find a way to cover it. I'm going to do it again, though. I've got South Carolina covering the number. They're 27.5-point underdogs, but Georgia wins straight up. How about Washington and Michigan State? 4 p.m. Central Time kick on Peacock. I know a lot of people aren't going to like hearing that, but this is a good game. Number 8 Washington in East Lansing to take on a team that's being ransacked with controversy, allegations, scandalous type of stuff. Their head coach, Mel Tucker, is currently suspended. There were reports that he was going to be let go. That could still happen. I like Washington to go on the road, win this game. They cover the number. They're 16.5-point favorites. And keep in mind, Iowa plays Michigan State. They play host to Michigan State here in a couple of weeks. Tennessee taking on Florida. Tennessee, 6.5-point favorites. I like Florida in this game, at least to cover. I don't think they'll have enough offense to win this game. They looked good last week against McNeese State. Tennessee's offense, maybe not what it was last year, but I think it's too much. This is a tight win down in Gainesville. How about a classic rivalry? Pitt taking on West Virginia. 6:30 p.m. Central Time kick from Morgantown on ABC. I like Pitt to win this game. I like Pitt to cover the number. This line is started. Pitt favored by 1.5. It's now West Virginia 2.5. I like Pitt against either one of those numbers. They win on the road. Syracuse taking on Purdue. Syracuse played Western Michigan last week. Iowa plays Western this week. Purdue struggled week 1, lost to Fresno, came back week 2, beat a different ACC team in Virginia Tech. I do think it's curious that they scheduled 2 different ACC teams. I think they sweep the ACC. I think they win at home. This will be a 6:30 p.m. Central Time kick on NBC. I like them against the 2.5. They're 2.5-point underdogs against the Orange. BYU taking on Arkansas in Fayetteville. Haven't seen enough from BYU. They just haven't been tested yet. I think they do cover the 8.5 because I have faith in that program. I like Arkansas, though, at home. Isaac Tesla, Iowa guy or a recruit that Iowa wanted from the transfer portal this past offseason, hasn't done a lot so far for Arkansas, but I'll be anxious to continue to follow his progress with the Razorbacks. It sounded like Iowa was in the final 2 or 3 before he committed to Woo Pig Sooie. But I do like Arkansas to win that game straight up, BYU to cover. TCU taking on Houston. Houston with a pathetic loss, gave up a ton of points. Their defense has been bad last couple of years. They went on the road last week, lost to Rice in double overtime. I think TCU blows them out. I think they win straight up. I think they cover the number there. The Horned Frogs are 7.5-point favorites. And finally, Ole Miss taking on Georgia Tech. This game, another 6:30 p.m. Central Time kick from Oxford, Mississippi. I like Ole Miss to win. I like them to cover the number. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Yellow Jackets. I think Ole Miss beats them by 20, 25 points, and they take care of business against that spread. And so that brings us to the game that many of you care about, Iowa and Western Michigan. Although it's not a huge game on the national docket, it is an intriguing game for a couple different reasons. And I talked about this. If you missed my preview earlier in the week, I'll throw it up here in the corner. But we've heard a lot written this week in the media, talked about with the media, that this is an opportunity to score a lot of points. And that's true. If you're Brian Ferentz right now, his contract stipulation says that the team has to reach 25 points per game at the end of the season in order for him to retain his current contract. Doesn't necessarily mean he'll be fired. We also have a change at the athletics director position. So perhaps if he doesn't meet that criteria, somehow Beth Getz or whoever's in charge at the time will not hold up that end of the bargain, which is what fans expect, and that will result in a revolt. But in the meantime, Brian has a chance to pad those numbers this week. They need to put up 35 at least on Western Michigan. I think 40 to 45 would be ideal. Syracuse put up 48 on the Broncos last week. Western Michigan is not very good offensively. They struggle to throw the football down the field. They're averaging under 6 yards per attempt. I talked about Jack Salopek. He completes a lot of short stuff, and they actually ran 3 different quarterbacks last week. The only real weapon on offense that I've seen on tape is Jalen Buckley, and the stats show it. Over 2 games, he's had about 300 yards rushing so far through 2 games. So we'll see. I mean, Iowa could give up some points. I just don't know where they're going to come from. Maybe you give up a broken play here or there. I squinted and found 10 points for Syracuse. So how many does Iowa score? I do think they connect on some deep balls. I hope that they don't show everything, but at some point you have to be able to show what you have. You have to be able to show it to yourself and build some belief prior to that game next week against Penn State. I think Iowa scores, we'll say 34. They won't quite hit the 35-point mark, but I think they win 34-10. 34-10, Iowa over Western Michigan. It will kick at 2:30 p.m. Central Time, actually 2:40 p.m. Central Time on BTN. If you're not there in Kinnick, be sure to check out on the Big Ten Network and join us, myself and Coach Don Patterson, following the game for Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Enjoy week 3 of college football, and we'll talk to you on Saturday evening.